Hello there, Pat here. So, for this episode, since we read the Nightland Knights Firebranded recently for the prologue and first chapter, I was thinking of doing from the first book that I had published, the Nightland Knights Makeshift, which happens several years before Firebranded takes place. So I'm going to start, once again, with the prologue from Makeshift. Thousands of years ago, during the first age of men, an ancient civilization used courage, honor, and leadership to establish a great many kingdoms. The leaders initially established 5 cultures: Nightland, the Western Kingdoms, Northland, Vineland, and the Great Khanate. Over time, the kingdoms began to have internal conflicts, civil wars, which developed into many other kingdoms. Nightland is a kingdom built by war and stonework. There are many farms in the fallowed woods. They have great castles and fortresses in the great mountains in the south. The castles are massive structures, some of them towering 4, 5, or even 6 stories high. They are built into the mountains and the terrain that surrounds them. The most prominent structure is the Great Watchtower, a stone structure that was built on top of the highest mountain in Nightland's southern territories. It goes up 8 stories with spiral stairs leading to its top. Before Nightland's great expansion, this tower was used to look over the mountains into the surrounding territories in times of conflict. If any armies were coming, a large signal fire was lit that illuminated the entire peak of the mountain, and a horn as large as a person was sounded to alert Nightland's armies. The northern parts of Nightland, above the fallowed woods, is scaped with hundreds of farms, stretching at least 4 square acres each. The towns there were more community-based, and less political than the people in the great mountains in the south. They preferred to grow their crops and raise their children in the countryside, in peace, rather than field massive armies for war. However, they would never go against a direct order from their king, if he had required such armies. The fallowed woods are the untamed part of Nightland. Fierce spirits roam there. The warrior spirits appeared to be a ghostly, luminescent blue. They are known to the people of Nightland as the Blue Mystics. They are the dead warriors who watch over Nightland and always appear to come to the true king's aid in the time of the kingdom's darkest hour. The Western kingdoms were always a group of smaller kingdoms that constantly feuded with each other. They've had their Shakespearean tales between star-crossed lovers, and they've also had their share of great betrayals. However, if the Western kingdoms were invaded by an exterior kingdom, such as Nightland, their neighbor in the east, or Northland, their neighbor in the north, the kingdoms would rally under one cause and drive out the invaders. As a region constantly in turmoil, there is never a clear king that rules over all of the small kingdoms. When Nightland took control of Coldbridge, the Western kingdoms were in a major civil war, and had no ability to rally against Nightland, even though Coldbridge was part of the Western kingdoms. The Western kingdoms are known for their famous feuds and their surprising variety of river fish. They had salmon, trout, bass, even some type of swordfish that lived in the far west, closer to the Western Sea. They are a land divided by rivers, which acts as a natural territory divider for the smaller kingdoms within the Western kingdoms. In the great white tundra of the north reigns the Northmen. They are a Viking-like nation, ruled by a joint group of jarls and earls, under the ultimate order of their great ruler, Hornhof Ragnarsson. The Northmen were told to have originated from another place, from across the northern sea, but no one has been able to find it, because the sea has severe low temperatures and tumultuous storms that are told to rip ships in half. Those that set out to find the homeland of the Northmen never return alive. Only the wreckage of their ships returns sometimes. Northmen are hunters that can farm very little due to the tundra they live in. They live in long houses and small stone fortifications, kept warm with many fires. They are trade partners with Nightland and some of the Western kingdoms, trading furs and weapons for food and wood. The kingdom of Vineland is a more rural kingdom. They like to focus their production on vineyards rich with grapes, wine, and olives. Their land is more suited for this, since they are the southernmost kingdom in the land, and therefore in a more tropical climate. Their terrain is also rockier than the northern areas of Nightland, so farming is a bit more difficult, but the little bit of soil they have is rich with minerals from the rocks. The capital of Vineland is along the southern coast on the dire cliffs overlooking the southern sea. The cliffs rise about 300 feet above the water, with only a small pathway down to the capital's port. The pathway was just wide enough for 2 horses to pass through at a time, so carriages were hardly used to transport materials, and logistics was a skill that had to be learned if you wanted to go from the port to the capital city. The cliffs were surrounded by a beach that left an acre of sand between the waters of the southern sea and the dire cliffs, where the capital's port was built. Vineland was never an enemy of any known kingdom, but they disliked their neighbor, Nightland, and were always jealous of its vast terrains and its centered location in the middle of the world's map. No one knows much about the Great Khanate. People have only heard of their great cavalry hordes that overwhelm their enemies and their expert use of Parthian tactics, shooting arrows precisely from horseback. They have no allies. They believe everyone but their own kin are enemies to the Khanate. The Colbridgians grew very wealthy and prosperous from tool-making, statue craftsmanship, and merchant trade routes. Their great wealth, however, led to their downfall at the hands of the Nightland Knights and the Neacrons, a small tribal group neighboring Colbridge to the east. The Neacrons had accidentally crossed paths with Nightland's forces on the march to Colbridge Fortress. After hearing them out and understanding they had a common goal, Charleston, the king of Nightland, made a deal with the Neacrons to storm Colbridge Fortress together and share the loot. King Charleston and the Nightland Knights captured the city. Then the Colbridgian kingdom fell to its knees. The Neacrons had died attempting to rush the gates before the Nightland Knights were prepared to strike. Before his death, the Neacron leader gave papers to Charleston, ensuring that he would inherit the land of the Neacrons. Charleston took control of both the land of the mighty Neacrons and the wealthy lands of the Colbridgians. Soon, the capital of the kingdom of Nightland was moved to Colbridge from the ancient boundaries of Eclipse City, a city upon a dark, perilous, typically dreary mountain. Although the appearance of the old capital was dim, it was defensive, secure, and the castles that were built there were beautiful inside. Red, black, yellow, and white throne rugs were spread throughout all of the main halls, with glistening crystal chandeliers and torchlit archway balconies lining levels upon levels above each hall. After the knights had finally abandoned the old city and moved to Colbridge, a new danger began to threaten their borders from the far east. Although there were mere rumors of a highly sophisticated invading force at the time, the kingdom began to repair Colbridge's outer defenses. They built up the interior stone and oak home districts within the walls in preparation for a possible enemy to strike them. Work days began to grow longer and harder for everyone. No one knew what danger could be lurking just a few steps away from them. During the preparation days, Charleston went into the woods to help gather extra troops and supplies, then never returned. Rumors spread that Charleston had either moved into the dark woods surrounding the city of Colbridge or simply passed away. The kingdom began to fade away as the darkness drew ever nearer to them. A duke was appointed by a council of nobles made up of native Colbridgians to watch over the kingdom. As terror from the east grew, the duke eventually died while traveling to a border town at the edge of the kingdom. After the duke was buried, a steward from a noble family took charge of the city of Colbridge. The knights began to turn Nightland into an empire that surrounding kingdoms dreaded. A small group of knights built up a small settlement which later became a town bustling with trade from the far east, on an island at the far northeastern edge of Nightland's borders. They named that town La Isla del Mar. As news of the terror of the East spread, the steward appointed a hand-picked batch of captains of the guard for the city of Colbridge. A young man by the name of Daupark Stromberg, basically still a boy, was appointed among them. One day a young nobleman's daughter, named Quartal, a true beauty, asked Dalpark to dispatch a few men and accompany her with them to journey to an old settlement just outside the southern borders of Nightland. Dalpark instinctively followed. Shortly after, he married his wife when he was only 18 years old. Just before they would set out, his wife gave birth to their son, Edward. The stage is set. Nightland is in peril. The young captain of the guard now follows Quartal to the old abandoned settlement of Barosphere, with his 4 most trusted guards at his side. However, they may be a bit too late to complete their journey home. As they approached their destination, Nightland began to crumble. The terror in the east finally made its appearance under the name of Khan. They overran the borders of Nightland hastily, surrounding and devouring Nightland's eastern settlements. Now, part 1 of this book is called Desolation, and chapter 1 is called Watchtower, which is sort of where our story technically begins. Now, Makeshift took me many years to write, starting when I was in 8th grade, and I finally managed to publish it when I got into about my first year of college, about halfway through it, I think. No, wait. Correction, 2019 as well, January. So that would be sophomore year. So it took me about 6 years, give or take, in order to fully write, edit, and publish this story. But it has a lot of good characters in it, a few plot twists, and a lot of adventure. So, I think that next week I will likely have chapter 1 to record from the Nightland Nights Makeshift, and I think that pretty much wraps up this video. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have a good rest of your day, wherever you are in the world. Thanks for watching.